When you play the Game of Thrones,
Subscribe and like.
you die. There is no middle ground.
Welcome to the Grease Goblins YouTube channel. Today's video, we're going to be talking about the riot that actually happens in King's Landing in Tyrion 9, A Clash of Kings. I did this chapter for my reread on my second channel, and it inspired me to kind of think about what was really going on there. Because a lot of people have come up with a theory that Varys was somehow involved in this riot. And there's a lot of evidence to back it, but there isn't much to truly confirm that the theory is canon. Even till today, we still have a big mystery about where the character of Tyrek Lannister actually went. Or if you're an OG on this channel, you know he's named Tyrek Lannister on this channel because when I first made a video on this, I pronounced his name wrong. So let's break down the actual riot, get our normal events, what actually happens, and then think about why Varys could be involved in some of the evidence for the actual theory. So the state of King's Landing at the time of Tyrion 9 and Clash of Kings has been building over multiple chapters throughout the books. Because at that point, there's no food coming into the city, everyone is starving, you can't even buy food even if you're, richer in the city, maybe you're a merchant, whatever, it's impossible to get food. Crime is rising at a staggering amount, and the city is on the brink of rebellion, a civil war within their own walls. And so that's all really important to understand, because even though we look at the Varys theory and it has a lot of merit, let's also remember the state of King's Landing is very reminiscent to the one that comes to mind for me is the Russian Revolution during the World War I kind of time period, where you have the upper class elite kind of flaunting their wealth and power, and then you have the rest of the country is starving, kind of the same idea. And so when we look at King's Landing, you have Myrcella, she is taking off to go to Dorne, and you have the royal party, which is dressed very richly. You have the High Septon, who's very overweight, and it has this great crown of wealth. He seems very corrupt, and you have our party going back to the Red Keep. Now, there's a number of things that happen that tick off the crowd and make everything go into chaos. So the first of these things is that a woman comes through basically the blockade of the Gold Cloaks and basically presents her child as being dead, likely because the child starved to death without having any food to actually continue going on. The woman is in a horrible state, and Joffrey basically throws money at her, publicly insulting her and shaming her. Cersei then throws in a nice snarky comment that makes the situation even worse, and this results in basically the shot heard round King's Landing as dung is thrown at Joffrey. Joffrey is completely ticked off by this. Jack Gleason's acting in the show does a fantastic job of showing this. He's demanding for that person to be found, offering up 100 gold dragons. He's sending the Hound to go find this person, and he's basically telling the Hound, yeah, cut through anybody you need to, treating these people like they're not even individuals or people, and that's what sets off the entire riot. Now, what's really important to understand about the riot is Varys is not present whatsoever. And when questioned about it later on in that chapter, Varys says he was doing the king's business. Very suspicious, given the entire court was seeing Myrcella leave. Like, literally any person that you can name that is in King's Landing at the time of this plotline is there. Minor characters like Lady Tanza and her daughter Lawless is there. Jalabar Exo is there. Aaron Santigar is there. All of the Kingsguard are here. So everybody that is anyone is at this seeing of Myrcella leave for Dorne. Varys is absent. There's three rationales you can look at with Varys. I think two of them are much more likely, and one of them is just kind of like, okay. So the first one is we take Varys at face value. He was doing some other stuff. Maybe he was trying to figure out information or do any number of things. Okay, I guess, but I just feel like it's really weird that Varys would not be at such a public event when he's always at these things, but fine. The second one is the fact that Varys understood the state of the city. He would know better than anyone what's going on in the city, and as we find out in Tyrion 9, people like Jacqueline Bywater even know, like, everybody's turning against the Lannisters. The condition is growing worse and worse and worse. They all knew that leading up to the riot. Tyrion, even before the riot, realizes the way the public is feeling. They're all dead silent. They hate and they disgust the high upper class of the Lannisters and Tyrion himself. Varys could have easily understood that and realized better not take the risk of something actually happening, especially when Varys is not a high-profile person to protect. you think about what actually happens, very few people get out of this riot unscathed. Like Sansa herself, the queen to be in the eyes of the Kingsguard, is nearly killed, or even worse things possibly happening to her. Varys would have been somebody that maybe would have understood that and decided to play it safe. Okay, fine and dandy. I can see that rationale. The other rationale is what we're going to talk about in the video, is the idea that he actually was the one that started the riot, or at least got things in motion. Again, I don't think Varys was somebody that was giving speeches and turning everybody against the Lannisters. It's very clear that King's Landing was already against the Lannisters. They just needed that tipping point. They needed something to turn them completely against them and go into violence. And so what was that catalyst? The catalyst was someone throwing dung at Joffrey. That was the catalyst that started out everything here. Varys is smart enough to realize what this would have caused. Joffrey is this pampered, evil king. He is somebody that would never take that lightly. That would start everything that happens. It's really the big tipping point. Now, could this just have been equated to people are hungry, they're starving, they're desperate, they're asking for bread, and somebody gets bold enough to strike the king with dung? Yeah, very easily. And that's where this theory kind of gets tough, because is it possible Varys could have done the whole riot? He really got it going? Very easily. Very easily could have done so. But then let's look at some of the other hints that tell us that this event, there was more going on than just the riot, because the riot itself could have been something that was not planned at all by Varys, but he still used to his advantage, like someone like Littlefinger. So let's look at the character of Tyrek Lannister. Tyrek Lannister, very minor Lannister. He's not set to inherit any of those type of things. He seems like a very valueless hostage until you really start to break things down. When you think about what actually happens with House Lannister and the state of the house, it starts getting much more complicated. Like, for instance, by the time we even get to the end of Dance with Dragons, Cersei's in a really bad spot. Tyrion is in exile at the moment. Jaime is a Kingsguard. He's not supposed to have children, and also he is a captive by the end of A Dance with Dragons. So Tywin's line itself's already in a bad spot. Tommen and Myrcella are bastards and likely could easily die in the coming books. And then you just start going down the line. You have people like Lancel. Well, he's part of the Sparrows now. He's not really going to have any children, it looks like. So you just keep going down the line, and you look at Tyrek, and yes, Varys would not have been able to predict all this happening, but Tyrek is a very valuable hostage if you can use him kind of as a puppet. Now, this divulges into the puppet theory idea that Varys is going to get all these different puppet rulers together to then maybe rule the Seven Kingdoms. So, for instance, Edric Storm could be used to rule the Stormlands. You would then have Tyrek Lannister, who possibly you would use as a puppet for House Lannister. There's a lot of things going on with that different plot, and so this is just a small part of it. And we know that Tyrek Lannister is not just some throwaway character. He is mentioned after this point pretty much in every single book. I think A Dance with Dragons is the only book he's not mentioned after this. Of course, it's mentioned in that chapter, and then when we get to the first Tyrion chapter of A Storm of Swords, it's once again brought up as Sir Adam Marbrand takes over the Gold Cloaks, and he has been ordered by Tywin to figure out what happened to Tyrek, whether he's dead, alive, or whatever, because there is no indication of where he went. There's no body, there's nothing. All the other people, we have at least some body, and they might be disfigured, torn apart, but not a single soul has any recollection of if Tyrek was taken off his horse, if he was being attacked. There's just nothing. He seemed to have just vanished. And so when we think about, going even further, A Feast for Crows, Sir Adam Marbrand and Jaime talk about this once again. What is possibly could have happened to Tyrek Lannister? It's brought up again. 2 books out. It tells us that George is still thinking about Tyrek Lannister. There's something more that George wants to keep reminding us about. If, for instance, there's the same idea with the horn that Sam has. If it was just some regular horn, why does George keep bringing attention to it when it doesn't maybe need to be brought attention to if it wasn't more important than it's stated as it is? So, in my opinion, that's the biggest mystery, is that Tyrek Lannister seems to have this hovering mystery about him that we just don't understand. And if we think about Varys, it would have been much easier to try and kidnap a Lannister in the middle of a riot than any time else. Think about it. You have all these different people going about. Tyrek is one of the less people you're going to be thinking about. I also want to point this out because it's made clear in Tyrion 9. Tyrion had Bronn have sellswords all throughout the crowd, trying to quell it if something went wrong. Could Varys have infiltrated those people? Again, a lot of the people that Tyrion was hiring was coming based off of the idea of Varys vouching for them. Could Varys have planted his own people to kidnap Tyrek? Very easily. But you might be thinking, isn't it quite risky for Varys to have this whole riot go down? Like, what if somebody like Tyrion dies? Or what if, some people that are actually competent die? Here's what I'll say. I think there's another facet of this that we don't necessarily think a ton about. Remember, Joffrey himself could have very easily died in this riot. As all this stuff is breaking out and people are rebelling, Joffrey is like shell shocked. And the only person that breaks him out of that and gets his horse moving and gets them going, somebody even gets close enough to Joffrey to put their hand on him, he would have possibly died. If Joffrey had died, the events of the entire story change. And think about what we even get at the very end of Tyrion 9 is Bronn bringing up the idea that if Tommen was the ruler, things would have been much easier to do. If you're Varys, you might be seeing this as well. If they can get rid of Joffrey, Tommen is a much better person to have ruling. And you think about why would Varys himself want Joffrey dead at this point? Stannis is coming to King's Landing, and you want Tyrion to win as much as possible. Because at this point, whether you believe that young Griff was an idea in George's head yet, whatever, Daenerys and young Griff are not ready to come over to Westeros. And Stannis winning the Iron Throne most certainly spells close to the end of the war. And for Varys specifically, that's a very bad thing because Stannis, I don't think he would tolerate Varys being on the small council. I think Varys would be removed. At this point, Varys had served the Targaryens, and we saw how that went with Aerys. He was somebody on Robert's small council, and then was on the Lannister small council. I think Varys would be removed. So there's a number of things for Varys is that 1, he doesn't like Melisandre and magic. 2, he doesn't want Stannis to win. He has every motivation to make it as easy as possible for Tyrion to rule and defend the city as best as possible. Also, the people don't like Joffrey either, so there's another part of it there. So I look at the situation of the riot, and as we conclude the situation, there's a lot of motivation for someone like Varys to do it. Do we know if that is the truth? No, because there's not enough evidence to suggest it. There's enough evidence to say, very suspicious stuff going on here, but not enough to say, yes, Varys was definitely involved. Is it suspicious he was not there? Yes. Is it suspicious that Tyrek Lannister keeps being brought up? Yes. Is it very suspicious all the theming and a lot of the foreshadowing going on in Tyrion 9? Yes. So, a lot of suspicious stuff happens. Let me know what your interpretation of the riot in A Clash of Kings and Tyrion 9 is, and I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. I was bound to have missed something, so let me know what you think if you have any added details, and I will see you guys all in the next one. Bye, guys.